Yeah, I don't know, man. You ever just feel like life is just catapulting towards some greater purpose?
Pampered fat cats with bloated ego. We are the only DJ crazy enough to tattoo Jackie Brown on his ass.
This is Michael Mann, and I ride with
Extended Clip.
Welcome to Extended Clip, everybody. It is episode 463, and I'm one of your hosts, Eddie Averill.
I'm Malcolm Baum.
I'm JT White.
And today we are continuing our mini-series on the television history films of Roberto Rossellini with 1971's Socrates, or Socrates, as the Europeans are so inclined to pronounce it.
Yeah, Socrates. Speak it normal, like how he was saying it when he was alive.
Yeah,
Jesus
speak
fucking
English.
Christ. Yeah.
This is Greece, speak English, which is a great way of getting into one aspect of this that is very funny, is that it's a film about, ancient Greek or ancient Greece, where they're speaking either Italian or French, depending on what dub you have of the film. But this is Rossellini's film about the great philosopher at a crucial point in his life, where he is put on trial for a scandalous accusation of corrupting the youth through his teaching and, proposing new ways of belief outside of the realm of the gods that were so established. And very much like Jesus Christ himself is basically tortured for this enlightened way of thinking to the point of execution. But unlike Jesus, he does not rise from the grave, as this film is just a straight march toward the death penalty of Socrates. And it's a film that goes a step further than the taking of power by Louis XIV in the kind of sparse stylistic approach, but also those zooms that were kind of occasional in that film make up the entire visual language of this film. I mean, this is like a Hong Sang-soo film with the amount of pans and zooms that the camera movement is made up of, and I find it to be such an interesting aesthetic approach. You get these big, like, matte painted backgrounds, and it really does feel like an old, TV or even theatrical production about ancient Greece. But I think that Rossellini's film style adds just enough drama to it, where we were talking about shades of drama in the last one. With this one, like, the combination of those zooms, the lead performance by Jean Silver, and especially the music.
Oh my God, that music is awesome.
Yeah, it's like quasi Brian Eno style music that is entirely unfit for a period piece that's all about like historical accuracy and teaching or whatever, but is incredible on an aesthetic level and adds so much weight to this movie. And I think that like the general aesthetic approach here is almost misinterpreted by most critics, where it seems mostly like, yeah, it's a austere, styleless film, if you will, this series of films, but really it seems like Rossellini is going through all of the tricks that he's learned over the last 3 decades of filmmaking. There's a ton of long takes in this that are reminiscent of the Italian neo-realist period, and there's a lot of other stylistic indulgences here that feel like they were more influenced by other art cinema that had cropped up over the last couple of decades. I find this to be kind of a mystifying artistic object. I have not quite seen anything like it, and I really loved hanging out with our new buddy Socrates, whether he is getting the rolling pin from his wife or, just like dropping facts in front of everybody in the town square, or fighting for his life, being forced into the world of politics. I just found it to be like an incredibly enriching and oddly entertaining aesthetic and historic object. JT, how did you take to this one?
Yeah, I thought this was amazing, especially after feeling out Rossellini in TV mode with Louis the 14th. It was like I knew a little bit more of what to expect. But I mean, I feel like going in with some sort of idea, like this was again like a little bit more different than that film in terms of style. Just like, I mean, having the painted backdrops, like the score, like there was just so much here that I felt was going beyond like just like, okay, like the previous one sort of doing like this, trying to present the moment of history and like kind of document it on that sense. This felt like something just like, again, like a little bit like, not like there's like an intense narrative drive here. It's mostly just like about how cool it is to kind of be a bum and like chop it up with your boys and kind of be like, what if? Like that is like, I like thinking about it. I was just like, Socrates was the coolest fucking guy ever. Just like running around. I say for like, I mean, I'm sure they allied some of the stuff that he was doing with those boys, but
yeah. There is one scene where one of his fellas is like really up close and personal with one of the toga boys, waxing poetic, waxing Socratic to him, if you will. And I was like, I'm glad that Rossellini is at least hinting at the fact that there is some weird boy action going on in ancient Greece. And maybe it's not so weird after all. Who knows? These days. Malcolm, how did you feel about this film and its representation of boy man love?
It wasn't exactly on the top of my mind there, the kind of these relationships you'd hear about in ancient Greece. But, I guess, there wasn't much to do back then. I could see them, kind of after you're done having, 8 hours of Socratic dialogues, kind of being, I enjoy your company so much. Why don't we kind of take it to the next level? But, beyond that, I was really into this movie. I was really into its style, and it kind of put the other Rossellini movie we watched in a deeper perspective to me. The Taking of Power by Louis the 14th. Was that the Nice, yes. Nice. That was so hard for me to remember that title. But thinking of that movie and thinking of kind of Rossellini's goal for these movies, right? Like he's really into the historical information and kind of I think people kind of say that like, oh, he's kind of presenting history as it happens, kind of in a way where it's not so clouded by opinion. But I feel like the style is kind of the point, with hand in hand with kind of the historical teachings here. And like with this one, I feel like the kind of zoom and pan style that you talked about, Eddie, is just so perfect for kind of the Socratic dialogues that would go on. See him walking with his crew, and then we get like the zoom in on the crew, and then we kind of focus on one of the characters, usually, Socrates and someone else. And we get kind of the slight pans, for their conversation. And it's not the most, I guess, when you think of, it's not quite Baz Luhrmann, right? But it is in service to, these discussions. And I feel like pairs perfectly with what's going on here. And then I think of, the Taking of Power one. That one, I felt like it's kind of one of its main points was like, how is power taken within the walls of these kingdoms? It's not in the battlefield. It's not, because of like glorious acts committed that, this person takes power. It's all about like the behind the scenes. And so for this one, I feel like its main goal is kind of to evaluate this Jesus-like figure as Rossellini deems him, with kind of his disciples and whatnot. Kind of like, how has Socrates' thoughts and ideas permeated this ancient Greece, especially in retrospect of a fascist takeover by the Spartans, and everyone's kind of calling him into question a little bit. It's not the Socrates victory lap. It's kind of more the people you've taught who learned under you are now taking power. There's still a lot more people kind of skeptical in Socrates and kind of like the worth of these kind of discussions. It's like, it's cool to say I don't know anything, but then all the people you taught are now taking over, and enforcing fascist rule. It's stuff like that in kind of hard times. People kind of call into question its value, and I don't know. I thought this was a great movie, and as someone I've claimed I don't know much about histories, it's like, dang, should I get into like Socrates? Should we start reading like Socrates and Plato? Have you guys ever read any of that stuff? Are you guys familiar?
I would love to. I've only read it in the context of like high school English class and Philosophy 101 in community college. But I would love to veer more into philosophy someday on this podcast.
I mean, the work Malcolm has done for the podcast is already kind of philosophy in its own right. I think there's something to be said.
Let's not lie, boys. We're all watching this movie being like, we're fucking Socrates, man. Like, they just want us, they want us dead for all the truth we speak about D.W. Griffith movies, man. They want to hang us on the pole like they did those other guys just because we know too much about movies. Let's be honest.
They treated him like fucking Richard Jewell, man. Like, I mean, I love how he's introduced just like, or even before Socrates is introduced, I love how this film picks up where the last one left off in terms of the procedures, and just watching like Hermetes and all these other dudes like laying down on elegant sofas while eating, being fed by their servants, just kind of like hanging with the fellas, like in Louis XIV, saying things that they probably wouldn't say to each other for the benefit of exposition to the audience, but that just adds to the, the history book feeling of these films. But then Socrates is introduced getting beaten up and letting it go, like he's like a enlightened version of a noir hero or something like that. And he's just like immediately dropping knowledge about, it's good to have opinions on what you know, but these Spartans, they're talking about everything. And I only agree with myself, and I never do the opposite of what I think. And as he's dropping these like classic totemic laws of thought, the ominous music is kind of building up with this like dramatic tonal shift, and then we see a little bit of the home life. And this is something I will say I had no idea about this, but I love how Rossellini makes this like a realist drama or something like that, where he just comes home and his wife's just like, we're broke. I can't afford crust. All the other philosophers are charging the rich guys. Why don't you charge the rich guys? You can't eat your thoughts. And it becomes like a domestic strife moment. And I really love the way that Rossellini plays that kind of more melodramatically than the rest of the film is played, to be honest. But one-sidedly too, because the performance by Jean Silver as Socrates is like so just solid as a rock and impenetrable at times, and I just love his performance so much, his posture and gestures and the way he rests his hands on his stomach, and his awful balding hair with the funny little twirled up combed part up top to cover up the bald spot. Like, he's got it going on. Socrates is just the man. Like, he's
Style,
just dropping
inspiration.
knowledge constantly. Well, he's also just like constantly dropping the sickest bars ever, and that's why he's got guys following him. It's very much like the Passion According to Matthew, like we talked about the Pasolini film about Jesus. It's very similar to that film, just stylistically a completely different approach.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, what can I say? Like, we've delved into these ancient teachings, and what we've come up with is Jesus, Socrates, pretty cool guys. They just like to chill. They like to like walk around, be like, nah, man, just take it easy, relax, maybe consider something else, and then just chill. And I don't know. It's very fun to, I don't know, take it from that angle. And I mean, obviously the Christ parody here is very, very like surface level, like you can spot it, but it's something that's just I don't know, pleasant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially with Rossellini as like an atheist who had made so much work about Christianity and Catholicism and grew up around that kind of stuff. Like, I feel like he was really passionate in making this film, you know, and there are a lot of moments where it's Socrates and his followers just milling about, hanging out, dropping knowledge, where it's much more reminiscent of like the Flowers of St. Francis than anything else I've seen by Rossellini. And that is still my favorite Rossellini film. So I always love when he veers in that direction. Very just like lyrical and of the earth.
Yeah, no, you definitely can't help but think about that movie while watching this one. I feel like they share a lot of qualities. And yeah, of course, having the group, having the squad, of course, is one of them. And I think like that scene you described where we first are introduced to Socrates' family life. Before that scene, we have a really kind of tranquil scene where, you know, he's buying some bread and some octopus. And I love how that's framed. It's kind of framed behind like the merchant's table. And there's just, you know, it seems like he's at the farmer's market, like he's having a pleasant Sunday. Yeah. And then, you know, the reality of his home life, you know, you haven't come back and gotten us any food for 2 days while there's like a huge war going on outside. Like we can't go outside because we're going to get like hung up by the pole. And, you know, as a
podcaster, I get it, though, because he's like, you know, I went out for bread and then I got caught up just like spitting facts with my boys, you know, like me and my boys were just like exchanging great ideas and I couldn't help myself but to talk for 2 days straight, you know.
And that, you know, that's one thing we've honed in on, right? Because we all love that aspect, right? Kind of like these discussions that Socrates has with his, you know, his followers and all that stuff. But it is like what's harsh is that he's living in a world that like is in great opposition to that. And he's having to, you know, constantly kind of defend himself from naysayers who've kind of are calling his influence into question. And it's because I feel like those scenes, there's a serenity to them and there's such a pleasure to them, just him kind of waxing philosophically. And then just most of the movie is him just facing grave punishment for this. You know, he's literally killed. So, you know, it's like, what did he do that was so wrong? Just then, other than, you know, be like, you know, maybe that isn't true. You know, and they're sentencing him to the grave for that. And there's just I feel like that tension is so effectively felt throughout the movie. And I feel like the score that you both mentioned earlier, I feel like definitely kind of helps underlay that mood where, you know, especially towards the back end where we know he's in trouble. It's an interesting tension, you know, kind of having these conversations while also knowing that, you know, that's the reason he's in so much trouble.
Yeah, I mean, they do not shy away from like kind of the brutality, you know, like you see a very long shot of all of these Spartans at the bottom of these poles where Athenian dudes are just being strung up to die, you know, and it's just like a sea of these poles with these Athenian guys, you know, getting killed on them. And there's that really long nighttime atmospheric like siege scene that's really awesome. And then also like, you know, that cut against the kind of absurdity that Malcolm described where it's like, oh, he just said something was different, you know, like, yeah, he gets accused of teaching oratory loopholes. That is what they say, which is just like a totally Kafka-esque setup for a trial. You know, he's teaching people how to talk around points. That's what you get in trouble for in this world, you know, for telling the truth and teaching people how to talk in a way that maybe bends the truth a little bit in their favor. Yeah, I just find this to be like such an interesting film on this, like all the same levels that Louis XIV was, with all of the historical reenactments of the odd procedures that just like baffle me and are just ways of me learning more about history. Like on a pure pedagogic level, it's fantastic, but I think like the shades of drama are much darker in this one than they were in Louis XIV. And I think that the music helps, the performance helps, and the scenario helps, where like Louis XIV was like almost a fuck you to dramatic structure, where the last 30 minutes is just him eating dinner, you know? Whereas this one, it does basically follow the Christ parable, but cuts to black right before the resurrection. And that is like a dramatic structure. That is a tragic structure. And so even as like removed and didactic and unprofessionally performed as it is, and very like clearly phony replications of things from history, I can't help but buy into it through like the truths that Rossellini is getting at scene to scene and in a larger perspective thematically that are not just universal, but also like the reason why we learn about these guys in the history books, you know? Like I really, I hate to say it, but I felt like I was like in, I don't know what grade this would have been in, like 10th grade or whatever English class, like getting a little juiced up on Socrates, getting like ancient philosophy. Like I remember in 10th grade English class reading The Allegory of the Cave and being like, shit's kind of trippy. Like this shit's kind of sick, you know? Like
it's cool. We're into mainstream philosophy. We fuck with it.
Here's the thing. It's like I'm watching all these year-end catch-up movies. I'm watching all these festival movies, these prestige releases by the studios, and these movies that are, you know, up for award considerations and everything like that. And then so when I go back to something like Socrates, it's such an incredibly fresh breath of air of stuff that just would not exist elsewhere. Like I don't know who else, like where else this type of cinema exists, and I find it to be just such a wholly unique approach to cinema that Rossellini takes in these films, and I'm so glad that we've been talking about them, you know.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm wrapping up, but there are more scenes to talk about.
You were talking about like, you know, learning some things, right? Like some scenes where Rossellini is kind of showing the old, you know, kind of ceremonies that, you know, these ancient traditions used to do. And, you know, that's a big part of, you know, why Socrates is in trouble, right? Because I think of that great scene with the animal sacrifice. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And, you know, Socrates and his crew of boys, they're all watching the animal sacrifice. And Socrates, it's like, you know, does the gods really find like this cock, as he calls it, this rooster, you know, do they really find this animal really that valuable that we just killed a random fucking animal, and like that, you know, the gods are supposed to be enthralled by that? And you know, that's like a huge part of the movie, Socrates kind of calling these things into question, and in a society that, you know, that's how they rule, is through ceremony and through all these, like, the strong arm of the law. Like, kind of his whole thing, right, of, like, you know, the way he defends himself, right? It's in opposition to the idea of the law, right? The law says, this is illegal, don't do it. If you do it, do this. This is going to happen. This is going to be your punishment. And, you know, the Socratic method is to, you know, well, if I'm really a bad guy, then, you know, why do all these people like me? Or, you know, that's kind of a paraphrasing of something he said. To be honest, that sounds
honestly,
like something.
That's one of the ones. That's one of the questions he poses. Yes.
Yes. So, you know, his method. I feel kind of. I feel like I'm saying method every sentence here, but it's just is in. To a fascistic rule, it's just, they're like, we got to get rid of this guy. You know, we don't want anyone asking questions, when, of course, you know, that's the pathway to knowledge, right? Asking questions, raising your hand in class when the teacher proposes a question.
This is this is the most like studious, pro learning, like good little boys. So happy, like, oh, but why does it have to be winter break? I want to learn so much more. Type of like the podcast has really changed, but like sincerely, educational aspects of these films is like such a fun part. I mean, just again, echoing what the two of you were saying there. I mean, obviously you, the listener, may not be able to tell, listening to this podcast, but I'm a pretty dumb guy. And sometimes it's nice to like experience like history on this way firsthand, especially with like what Rossellini here is doing here, like lifting some things like directly like from Plato's like writings on Socrates, his teachings, things like that, like where it's just like, I don't know, especially like coming to this now at this point in time in my life where I'm like, oh shit, like a lot of this stuff that at one point I feel like would have seemed like a little bit more like dour or boring or something like that, is just like, I don't know, really exciting to have history presented in this way that's not necessarily like a historical moment I am generally interested in, but the like sort of free-flowing like style that Rossellini gives it. Again, this one having like slightly more narrative pressure, like I think just makes it more compelling to be like, oh wow, like this shit is cool. I should learn more about this stuff.
Yeah. I love the scene where Rossellini's just giving us more historical context to the importance of drama and storytelling in Athens at the time, where you get a guy who's just like, hey, Socrates, you remember that time where is it Aristophanes? Yeah, where Aristophanes like wrote a comedic dialogue about you. He's like, yes. He's like, can I do it? I'm going to do both sides of it. And he's just like this guy doing both sides of like a 2-man ancient Greek comedy routine about Socrates to Socrates' face. And he's like, yeah, well, that's not me. You know, I don't know what to tell you. That's not Socrates. That's just Aristophanes' version of Socrates. Or Aristophanes. I can't read my own writing here, but I'm pretty sure that's the guy's name. But at the end of that scene, once he's done like kind of dispelling the myths of the skit, this guy's just like, hey, Socrates, why don't you go into politics? And it's a nice foreshadowing for what's to come, but also, even if they're not speaking English and I'm reading it along, this joins the ranks of some great films and not so great films where it's named after the guy, and then people call the guy by his name all the time in the movie, you know, like people are always saying like, hey, Socrates, let's get out of here, you know, in this movie. And it always kind of makes me laugh. And another one like that is Jay Kelly. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see it yet, but
Not
like
yet.
there's like 30 times where people are like, yo, Jay Kelly, get over here. Like, I love you, Jay Kelly. Jay Kelly, you're so handsome. There's one that I'll talk about on Malcolm in the Middle that fits that criteria as well, but I just love movies where people say the guy's name all the time.
A movie you'll talk about in Malcolm in the Middle?
No, that's the thing. I'll
Okay,
it's a transition to a TV show.
Okay.
Well, trust me, I plotted this thing out to really tiptoe around the format restrictions here.
Interesting.
That scene, you know, where the guy recites the play to him, you know, made me kind of think of the, you know, entertainment back then, right? And it's like, you know, are people reading back then? Or they're talking?
Well, that
right?
comes up right after this. That comes
That
up
is
right
true.
after
Yeah,
this,
they
Malcolm.
are.
That's why
They are.
you know what, that was a great Socratic method way of getting to that point. So Malcolm asked, are people reading back then? Well, here's the thing. In the very next scene, accusations of corruption go public about Socrates by being written on the door of the palace in a way he just got Me Too'd in an ancient way, you know? And then Socrates goes on this like anti-writing diatribe inspired by the written accusations, where he's just like, you know, drama got a lot worse when people started writing it down. You know, it's got to be an oral tradition. The Iliad, that sucks. You know, the Iliad's only good when it was Homer telling it. You know, once people started writing down the Iliad, oh, what is this? You know, and I kind of love how crotchety he gets out of that just to make a point. Like, clearly he's taking the side of an argument to try to dispel what was just written about him by like dispelling the entire medium of the written word, which I loved that scene. That was one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
And that's why film podcasting is better than written film criticism, because it's a conversation, just like Socrates would say, right? You know, that's why, you know, we originally, when we started the podcast, it's like, why don't we just make this a thing where we all write to each
a zine,
a scene, or we all write. You know, we do this, but it's in writing. Like we just kind of, you know, it's like a book.
It's an epistolary letter. It's like a email chain, you know, an epistolary novel between three boys writing to each other about movies. Dearest Malcolm, I saw the greatest film the other day.
It would have been more like a newsletter or something like that, or like something for your email.
I don't know. I like the romantic epistolary novel.
But, you know, when that guy does the play, it like, I'm just thinking, like, our plays, like, basic, and I know they had music, too, but it's just, like, that's what they do for entertainment. It's like, dude, do you remember this play? And you just kind of do 5 minutes of this play with your boys,
Honestly, I think so.
I think that's what they were doing.
Well, yeah, because there's like real stagings of it and stuff where like the best actors in town are doing it in the Greek theater, you know, blah, blah, blah. They got all the, you remember those parts of history class and those paintings of that and the statues and stuff. And, you know, so they go to these not Coliseum, but they go to these theater shows and they remember the plays, I guess. It's an oral tradition. But anyway, speaking of other traditions that are funny, once the trial starts, you see them getting these like stone tablet versions of press badges. Like certain guys going in, they're like, you're gonna need this to get through and get back out, and it's like a rock. that feels like a Mel Brooks joke. Like if this was like Mel Brooks's young Socrates or something.
That's on the table. This is old Socrates. I do need a young Sheldon like recounting of his come up. You know, how did because all right, this is real dumb guy hours. There's like the three ancient philosophers, right? It's like Socrates, Plato. Who's the other guy? Was Socrates first? Was he first in the food chain? Does anyone know what
I'm not going to say anything. I'm not saying anything.
I don't. Eddie is taking the right way of not implicating himself with anything said here.
Yeah, like because there were guys before him.
There were other people being philosophers.
So the three guys you're referring to, Malcolm, I'm guessing, are Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle.
Yes,
But there was like Pythagoras was before that, and they mentioned Pythagoras in the movie. They're like, look, man, we can't get too crazy like Pythagoras. You know, they killed him for his ideas.
What is his theorem?
His triangular ass idea.
He's just doing math on a chalkboard.
He was because he was a numerologist. Basically, he thought numbers were the philosophy of life. You know,
he was like Jim Carrey in the number 23. That's yes.
The number 23 is a Pythagorean parable. Yes, Malcolm.
I mean, that guy was pretty crazy. Then you know, seeing what Jim Carrey did in that movie, maybe they were right to put him down. I don't know.
But the trial takes up most of like the back half of this movie. I don't really love like courtroom dramas, and this definitely takes that structure for being a Jesus movie. It's pretty funny that it also like takes the structure of a courtroom drama, where you have like a 35 to 40 minute showdown there. That it has some of the better material in the movie, but also I don't know why that format has just never been like my favorite dramatic conceit, other than like, I don't know, Anatomy of a Murder is probably the only one I can think of that pulls off that structure like that.
Wait, I didn't know that you weren't a courtroom drama guy. I you know, there's some I like and some I don't like, but you're not a fan of Al Pacino and Scent of a Woman, saying you know.
Well, that's the thing. That was a representation of how oversaturated the courtroom drama was, because that wasn't even a courtroom. That was a school board, and Al Pacino got brought in to treat it like a courtroom drama finale. That's how addicted people were to courtroom drama finales back then. And I don't know. It's not for me. It's just not my thing. There are obviously exceptions to the rules. I could probably rattle off a top 10 courtroom dramas and love all of them. But like, it's not an approach I usually love. So that is to say that like, it's not my favorite part of the movie. Like the aspect that this part of the movie is the longest part of the movie is not my favorite dramatic choice in the film. That being said, I still really, really like the trial scene. Stone tablet press badges and all.
I do also like the idea of like, I don't know. Obviously it does play like pretty much like a standard like courtroom scene, which I like. I'm a sucker for a courtroom scene. I get what you're saying there, and I think like part of the reason I like seeing a courtroom scene back then in another sort of like history kind of thing, presenting it as it is. Like that's kind of like entertainment, like just like walking around and seeing like, oh, whoa, that's homeless guy, Socrates. They're like, why? There's a big thing. They're all taking him to trial. That's crazy. And just everyone being there to observe it, like just out in the open, out in public. I think that honestly they should do that now because it's like people do like wait outside the courtroom and shit like that. Just bear it all in the street.
Yeah, I think the ancient Greek trial setup. I like it, because in like an American court, right, you got like the judge with its, its big desk, big podium, whatever you would call it. They got the gavel and like, they're kind of like the center of attention. And then you have like the people, you got the side desk and people are giving their testimony on the side desk where
the witness stand.
The stand. That's what I'm looking for.
Side desk.
The side desk.
I like side desk. I like side desk.
Will the witness please go to the side desk to give a well, you know what I'm doing? I'm questioning authorities' importance by that they put on that witness stand. Oh, it's so official. It must be the way we have to do things. No, I'm more into the ancient Greek where you get...
No, it's just a desk on the side. What is it really? Breaking down the philosophical construct.
This film, I might have to dock it a star because in the future it's going to lead to Malcolm just like getting stuff wrong but ending the sentence with a question mark and just getting away with it like that. So we go like, well, what was this film directed by Antonioni? No, Malcolm, it was not.
Do.
It was directed by Rossellini.
I think I'm already there.
Well, now you have some philosophical tenets to back up the style.
He's gonna lean into his Socratic ways.
But the ancient Greek trial where they have like Socrates is like the star of the show. It's like a stage platform right in the middle.
It's sick
of the thing, and he gets to do his classic method, his classic routine for the audience, and it's a little bit more pro criminal, pro person who's being tried. And like I feel like with courtroom scenes, right, maybe what kind of makes them not so great a lot of the time is that like you kind of like everything in the movie is kind of being laid out in like kind of almost like plain terms or whatever, or and sometimes people subvert that with like like that Edward Norton movie where he's like, actually I did do it at the end. But saying some things that could be maybe more artfully unsaid, where I feel like it works for this movie, right? Just because of its goal of conveying Socratic thought and kind of like how his, ideas have, kind of permeated throughout, ancient Greece there. So having to defend his way of life in front of the public, I think is it's good for a Socrates movie. I think it's a good move.
After like the courtroom proceedings are done and he's ruled guilty, and one more note on the courtroom proceedings, I also love that I guess it was in ancient Greece where they invented snapping instead of clapping for people, like at like poetry readings and stuff like that. I liked seeing that in this movie. But like his last moments after he's sentenced to death are so beautifully rendered, where he's in the cave with the fellas and like says goodbye to his family, and then he's like, all right, you guys can kind of screw off for a little. I got to drop a couple last bars of knowledge to the boys, and then you can come back in for your final goodbyes. But as him and all of his students are gathered around him, trying not to cry or whatever, that's just like the most gorgeous painterly composition of the whole movie. I feel like, and this is me really exposing my dumbness, I feel like that's definitely like a reference in the staging and everything to maybe a famous painting. But maybe it's just pure Rossellini genius. Who knows? But regardless, it becomes such like a frank film about death in the last like 10 minutes. Just like he's kind of shrouding himself after he takes this poison, and just has this fairly abrupt fade / long cut kind of to black. You can't even really tell because it's already so dark in there. And you just have to think back to what he was saying about, death not being the end, and the immortality of the spirit. And the immortality of the spirit is embodied in the fact that we're talking about a movie about Socrates today,
Mm-hmm.
And that could also be the immortality of Rossellini's spirit, or the immortality of Jean Silver's spirit, not just Socrates's. So I find this film to be quite moving and quite beautiful, and academically enriching as well, pedagogically enriching. I'm going to go with a nice hearty 4.5 bullets on this one. It kind of exceeded my expectations even. What about you, Malcolm?
Yep, we're all going Goodwill Hunting mode. We're all standing on our desk, raising our fist for our favorite teacher, Mr. Socrates.
I think that's Dead Poets Society.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. I've actually never seen Goodwill Hunting, so...
I was about to go watch it the other night. I'm surprised you haven't seen it. You're a big Gus Van Sant fan.
True. I feel like I haven't seen... like maybe his big money hits, but it's not out of protest. I do want to see it. I'm going to give this one 4 bullets. I really liked it a lot. I feel like, what I was saying earlier, I just feel like it's a perfect balance of kind of Rossellini's kind of like educational instincts, like his deployment of real quotes, from Plato's book there, matching it with this style that I feel like is perfect for, just conversations and questions. And I feel like I compared to the Taking of Power, it just has a much more a flow to the style, where that one was kind of a little bit more I guess I'm gonna call it sterile, but I like it. I think it's a good method. And in this one, I don't know. I feel like the effectiveness of Socrates' teachings is just matched with a perfect style that adds some dramatic tension, but also is very willing to kind of just stop in its tracks and kind of let the words do the talking. And I think that's what you got to do for this figure here. I think that's why. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one a lot.
JT, what about you wrapping up here?
Yeah, I'm going to go 4.5 bullets. I really loved this one. I think the Rossellini history project clicked a little bit more into place for me with this one. I think in part because the tone is more reverential, like Louis the 14th. I feel like to some extent takes the piss out of historical drama and the importance of all of that. And this style of it feels less cold and detached in a way that reveals the cynicism of how power works. And this is just more feels like a more earnest tribute to one of the great inquisitive minds and the idea of having an inquisitive mind. And that's something here I think we just, all three of us, I'd say the link that keeps us together is our beautiful thinking minds. and the great questions we provoke and ask each other on this very podcast.
JT, I'm glad that you said Louis XIV, the approach was taking the piss, because I was just thinking about the comparison between these two films, where that film feels almost partially defined by the servants smelling the cardinal's piss in the beginning of it.
Yes,
like
true.
that is like a statement of purpose shot early on to show you this is kind of be about how disgusting the monarchy is. This is a film. There's no peeing in the bushes. There's no wiping with a leaf. The worst you get it is them being like, "All right, we got to shower Socrates before they kill him. We got to give him a shower first."
True, they did let you know that he smelled. He does smell.
Yeah. But it's still very reverential in that regard, and I really love that about it. And I think that so JT went 4.5. I did 2. Malcolm went 4. I think those are all the same ratings we gave Louis XIV last time as well.
True.
My Louis XIV was 4.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say though, it's gonna be tough when we finish this series, the obligatory ranking round, and maybe even throwing in the other Rossellini's we've seen, a la the Verhoeven rankings, will be very interesting. But we'll be right back on Extended Clip. Cool. All right. Anyone need to sniff the cardinal's pee-pee?
No, I got my pot right here. My what is the chamber pot? I got my chamber pot. I'll just go right now.
All right.
We can get into it.
I'm fired up because on our last episode we didn't do a Malcolm in the Middle, so I didn't get to talk about this TV episode I wanted to talk about.
No, I'm ready. I watched TV explicitly to be talked about.
Let's
in the
fucking
middle.
go. All right. And we're back on Extended Clip. It is everybody's favorite segment, Malcolm in the Middle, which I think is going to retain its name. I don't really like the dirty renaming that we did last time. What was it? JT's Backdoor Special or something like that?
Something at the back end.
I forgot about that.
I didn't
end.
like that.
JT around the back.
Yeah,
or something like that.
I got some very negative feedback about it from our listeners, and I hear you loud and clear.
JT's back end, I think it was called.
Yeah. Well, the segment formerly known as JT's Back End and is now once again called Malcolm in the Middle is brought to you by another segment, the email segment. Please email us. Send us your questions at extendedclippodcast@gmail.com. So, Malcolm, regarding this month, if you didn't already know, and I can't imagine you would listen to the Socrates episode, but not the Taking of Power of Louis XIV episode, but regardless, we are not talking about movies on Malcolm in the Middle for our TV movie month. We are only talking about television. So what's been on the boob tube lately, Malk?
You know what? It's interesting. I feel like in doing this segment, we've been getting kind of nostalgic, right? We're talking about the old cable system, flipping the channels, something's on, a sitcom we're familiar with, and kind of the joys of that. We got into that with our cyber seduction, his secret life episode. And I'm zagging. I'm going the opposite. I'm watching a Netflix docu-series. Netflix, they've been in the news, right? And you usually ask me, is life unfair? And you know what? Actually, I was going to set up a joke, but it's too insensitive because I watched Sean Combs, also known as Diddy documentary on Netflix in its entirety.
So are you saying
are you saying life has been unfair to him?
No. Yeah, that's what I came away. Yeah, and yeah,
Diddy in the middle.
I came away with
the segment.
Did he do it? Yeah. Yeah, justice for Mr. Combs. No, that's not the conclusion I came with. That's not, that would be, if I thought that, I would keep that to myself. I wouldn't even be able to admit that to the listeners.
That's a real if I did it kind of setup there. If I thought Diddy was innocent, I wouldn't say anything. But here's what I would think.
No, he's not innocent. I mean, I was going to say life is unfair to all, the people's lives he ruined.
Of course.
Yeah, certainly.
Oh boy. So how's the documentary about Diddy for this segment, Diddy in the Middle?
Diddy in the Middle. Taking it how it is, I knew it was going to be kind of just watching kind of Netflix documentary style content before. I knew it wasn't going to be the most respectful way that they could do this, right? They kind of tend to, make things kind of more salacious. Just taking how it is, it's an interesting documentary because a lot of it is like, talking heads and archival footage. And then they do have some footage that like 6 days before Diddy was arrested that I guess he hired some independent, videographers to kind of follow him around. And I think those people, they were just taking a job. So I guess what seemed to be pro Diddy footage got sold to a documentary that's going over his guilt. And, that footage is just kind of, it's kind of just him talking on the phone to his lawyers being like, you got to get me out of this, just kind of asking, how could we spin this? I think the most interesting stuff is the interviews, right? Because it's a lot of people who are kind of associated with him the longest. It's not like they're getting like the biggest, it's not like they got Jay-Z in the chair and they're like, did you go to these parties? Did you see anything crazy? It's kind of more following people who were associated with him for a long time and kind of like, you can't help but think with some of these people, it's like, is this kind of like the cover up for like, associating with him for a long time and then kind of like, oh, you know what? Now in retrospect, yeah, he was pretty guilty. He was, the things he was doing, not so great. I guess, I don't know. I just had an interest in this case, someone who likes rap music. And in terms of like information I found out so far, it's not really revealing anything new. And it's kind of its most interesting aspect is kind of relegating his past and kind of, putting some of most hip hop's most famous crimes kind of, it seems like he was an orchestrator in a lot of that, Tupac's death. Stuff like that. I don't know. It's in retrospect, it's the only TV I watched, so that's why I'm talking about it. It's not. It's maybe not the most interesting. There was a couple funny, crazy moments where like this producer's like, yeah, like I was in the studio with Diddy and he just showed me this video of like, like a white guy getting like anally penetrated. He's like, this is what we need the album to sound like, or something like that.
What?
That's a pretty funny moment. That's
crazy.
Right? But most of it's
wild.
Most of it's, obviously sad stuff. He was a pretty bad guy. They kind of would do this like talking head interview thing where like they're like cutting to like, like the awful footage of like Diddy beating his girlfriend. And it's just like, it feels like a little too, they're trying to present it in it's like such a shocking way where I do, I'm with the project of like, we need to show how guilty this guy is. But it's like, when it comes to real life stuff like this, I get a little queasy when sensitive topics are not presented in the most sensitive manner. But sure. I guess that's what you'd expect for something like this. So that's the Diddy documentary.
JT, have you watched anything on TV recently, Diddy or otherwise?
I'm going to go with otherwise.
Thank God.
Imagine if the both of us, the thing that I said I was really excited, the TV that I watched exclusively to talk about in the middle segment of the podcast was also, or maybe a different Diddy documentary, a to-be Diddy documentary. Because each streaming service definitely has their own one.
Definitely. Diddy is like Fire Festival in that way.
Yeah, but I chose the moral high ground, and I was not lured in by the promise of salacious footage and horrible crimes. I just wanted to hang out with some of my old sitcom buddies. So I fired up the Drew Carey Show.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure.
Cleveland rocks.
Mimi?
Cleveland rocks. Ohio. Yeah, Mimi Bobek. Mr. Wick. Oswald. Lewis.
You have all these characters.
We should we should just do an episode where we just like name sitcom characters just like for an hour straight. Like
Oh, I got you.
Niles, Frasier, Daphne.
Like the Drew Carey Show, did I imagine from also being able to name some characters, both of you have seen some episodes of the Drew Carey Show, or
A handful.
at the very least you know of his
Yeah.
existence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there was another sitcom in its era that I would watch that came after. So I'd watch like the tail end of a lot of Drew Carey Show. I was more familiar with his game from Whose Line Is It Anyway? But I did
Sure,
like
yeah.
the man.
I was a Who's Line head as a kid, as well, and so of course the familiar face of Ryan Stiles as Oswald in the Drew Carey Show very much so excited me. Drew Carey and Ryan Stiles are buddies in real life. Wow, he's in 2 shows together. That's awesome. And so I dabbled a little bit. I was a very big into watching 90s sitcoms when I was staying with family members that didn't have cable. That's usually what I did when I was a kid, as a babysitter. So I inhaled a lot of Drew Carey Show, Just Shoot Me, some Becker, the real the third string sitcomers. Not again, no heavy hitters like Seinfeld or anything early on.
Yeah.
Just sort of some 90s rejects. And the Drew Carey Show was really fun. My lingering memories of it were that it was one of the earlier things where they would do kind of weird format bendy episodes. I was watching them in syndication as a kid. So it's kind of funny that this it stuck out but was incredibly pointless. They would do episodes where it would be Spot the Difference, and it would be a something where you would write in to whatever TV studio was airing the Drew Carey Show, and it would be they would intentionally put things wrong. Drew Carey would be wearing a fuck you tie or something, or his desk would be in the wrong place. And so if you noticed enough of the weird things going on, I don't know what the exact the contest was. Maybe let's say you got a free Drew Carey Show shirt to impress all your friends with. But that was a contest that they did a few times.
That's crazy. I had no idea about the existence of that. I'm looking it up right now because that's catnip to a guy like me. I love that kind of thing.
There are a lot of weird change in format Drew Carey Show episodes, and that for the last few years I've kind of wanted to rewatch the show. But it's one of those things where it's a 9-season 90s sitcom. There are a million fucking episodes, and I am more excited at the prospect of being a guy who knows every episode of the Drew Carey Show than actually going through with it, because I don't know, the first it's one of those things where I imagine it's a ramp up, and the first season is probably rough going. So this time around, knowing that I wanted to talk about Drew and Mimi Bobek on the podcast, I was okay, let's do some research. And I searched Reddit Best Drew Carey Show episodes. And the one that I went with, took for a spin, was this season 4 episode Drug Co., where Drew Carey's dog is under the weather. It really builds up to just sort of a zany third act, or second into third act where Drew Carey's dog is sick, and so he goes to Ryan Stiles works at he's a janitor for like this big like pharmaceutical evil company, and they're like, oh, there's like this dog medicine here. And so basically they just go to the big like company for like the kind of tail end sort of like set piece where there are a bunch of doors that just lead into like zany experiments in different rooms, like elephants, things like that. Like you get a lot of mileage out of that kind of gag. And that was really what I was looking for, was like again the weirder, more surreal, cartoony Drew Carey Show episodes that I know are out there. I had a decent time with it. To be fair, a lot of looking at my phone during some bad parts. But I genuinely like the cast. Like Craig Ferguson, I watched a lot of the Craig Ferguson late night show as a kid too. He's charming as Mr. Wick. Diedrich Bader as one of Drew Carey's friends. Great.
Gotta love
I'll
Diedrich.
definitely be returning to this well at some point, whether or not it comes up on the podcast again.
It was funny, last time we did one of these segments, King of Queens came up, and I was misinformed about, Patton Oswalt's role, of course, as Spencer, the nerd of the group. And so I was like, you know what, I got to take myself to school here. And, after a couple like basketball games or movies or just like final thing on the TV, final thing on the screen, I was like, what's on these free internet cable emulator channels? Of course, it's King of Queens. So I was watching a little KOQ, and it's a pleasant show, man. I even, because I was thinking about, man, I sound like Joe Biden. I was watching King of Queens. More guys should be like Kevin James, man. No, but I was thinking when JT was talking about the season 4 episode of Drew Carey Show, and then that contest episode with what's wrong with this episode is season 3, and I was like, damn, season 3, 4, like if you got a decent sitcom, if you got a decent enough writer staff on there, by season 3, 4, like you're gonna churn out some pretty high quality stuff, I though was kind of blown away by a season 7 King of Queens episode, and I was like, damn, they were still cooking at this point, like this is a good one. This was an episode called Furious George that aired on November 10th, 2004, just a few days after George W. Bush won a re-election. And this episode sees Kevin James, aka Doug, being forced to go to like an Overeaters Anonymous meeting by Carrie, the wife. And as he's on his way into the meeting, because like the Simpsons adult education place, all of the meetings in town for every single type of disorder or anything are in the same building, So he walks past one that has a whole tray of like donuts and cookies, and he just like saunters on in there and starts loading up. And it turns out this is an abusive spouse support group. And so basically they convince him that the reason he's overeating is because of his wife's verbal abuse toward him, And so most of this episode consists of like him telling people that and them treating him like he's a battered housewife, and it's very funny. And then the resolution is even funnier because, she eventually, in classic sitcom fashion, catches him right at the second act break, going to, visit him at his support group and finding him in the wrong support group, with a handful of donuts. And they vow to both change their ways, and, she'll be less angry and he'll eat less. And then they go to the movies and get annoyed by someone, and she's like, hey, if I can yell at that person, you can have all these candies. And he's like, all right, sure. And that is how they get back to the perfect circle of sitcom storytelling of making this like progress as a couple and then getting annoyed by someone and being like, all right, whatever. And I found it to be a hilarious episode. I laughed quite a few times throughout the runtime, and it didn't really lean on the side characters the way a lot of King of Queens episodes do that I've noticed. This one was really just Doug, Carey, and the few guest stars that were, replacement level.
Yeah, King of Queens it's a top-notch sitcom. I've banged this drum before, but it is definitely is underrated when it comes to that discussion. I think there's a lot of people who are willing to watch something like Seinfeld and Frasier, and they're like, King of Queens, that seems a little too blue collar for a high-minded intellectual.
There's sitcom elitism, of course.
Yeah, I only like bourgeoisie sitcoms like Friends.
Yeah, because he's a UPS driver. You could call that blue collar, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
You certainly can.
Anyway, that's going to do it on this week's episode. Please join us on the Patreon for $5 a month. You can get an extra episode every single week. That is the side of the podcast where we're not talking about Rossellini history films, but more trashy TV movies for the rest of the month. And you're also supporting your boys. Goodbye, everybody.